Could possibly vote to increase gun measures through a ballot initiative. Missouri Capitol Bureau Chief Joe McLean explains from Jefferson City.
There are actually several bills in the Missouri legislature right now that would increase gun safety regulations in the state, but they're all filed by Democrats, and they're not likely to go anywhere in a legislature that's heavily controlled by Republicans who say these policies are not needed.
The only way it is likely to happen is if we actually get the momentum behind a ballot initiative, gather the signatures, get it on there.
Democratic State Representative Peter Meredith said he doesn't think Missouri's General Assembly will strengthen gun safety measures even after a mass shooting at a major national event in the state. 2 teens have now been charged with firing shots, which authorities believe started with a simple argument.
What makes it different in a state like ours and in a country like ours is our gun worshiping culture. And the fact that we have such lax gun laws that every fight in a public place, it suddenly becomes a gunfight.
But those laws are not likely to change from Jefferson City. House Speaker Dean Plocher getting peppered with questions Thursday, eventually storming off.
Sorry for those that have lost their lives. They're heavily weighed on our shoulders as we saw what happened, and as that unfolds, we'll have greater comment.
Missouri law prevents local cities, municipalities from enacting stricter gun regulations. Why?
Okay, we're moving on. I already addressed that.
What ordinance? Why should Kansas City not
We're
be
done
doing
here.
that?
Thank you.
And in Washington, D.C., Missouri Congressman Mark Alford on Thursday brushing off the idea.
We don't need more gun control in America. We need more self-control. And that's what was lacking yesterday.
I spoke with David Hogg, who survived the 2018 mass shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Florida. He's been one of the most vocal advocates for national gun reform in the years since.
There is hope. After Parkland, we showed up and demanded action. We got thousands of people to go to our state capitol that was controlled by Republicans, and we were able to pass gun laws there with a Republican majority in both chambers and a Republican governor. But the key is we showed up.
In Missouri, voters could have a chance to pass gun safety measures on the November ballot this year. 6 versions of gun safety policies are currently gathering signatures. They include requiring concealed carry permits, requiring background checks, and imposing red flag laws. In Jefferson City, Joe McLean, WGEM News.